Hello, everybody, and welcome to the One and Only Shootcast, a podcast where I, your host, PHS, sit here, watch wrestling, and talk about it, because everybody else in my life is very annoyed that all I want to do is talk about wrestling and the stuff that I've seen. And at first, it started out just being WWE, or WWF as it was once known, but then it evolved, and I started checking out all these indie ones, New Japan, Ring of Honor. Now we've got AEW, and I will be covering all of that. I'll be jumping around. There's no real linear structure to this, except that as far as WWE goes, I am going to be going in order because I got the WWE Network, only $9.99 for new subscribers, and they don't sponsor me. Nobody sponsors me. This is just a way for me to get out my love of wrestling and just to feel a little bit better about talking to myself while I watch it. So I'm very glad you guys decided to check this out, check out the Shootcast. It's a passion project of mine because I love watching wrestling and I love explaining to people why I love wrestling. And just to give you guys a little bit of an idea, because I'll definitely be going into this in the first episode and probably talking about it a lot more than you guys want to hear, is that the reason I love wrestling so much, the reason I watch it, is because I grew up, I was a comic book nerd. I was a huge comic book nerd. Now, granted, I played sports, and I wrestled in high school and junior high and as a kid. So this was a way for my two loves, my athletic love of wrestling and fighting, because I'm the youngest of three brothers, and that's what we did. We fought. But I'm the youngest of three boys, and my brothers got me into comic books, so I spent a lot of time reading comic books and looking up at these superheroes who are big and buff and jacked, you know. I'm talking like John Bogdanove, Jim Lee, rippling Kurt Busiek pectorals, and all my geeky friends that are listening to this, you'll get the references, but just oversized, overdone muscles. And then I wrestled as a kid, and I saw all these older guys that looked like they were in their 30s to me at 7 or 8, but they were 18, 19, and they were just jacked. They worked out all the time. And so I had a lot of admiration for that. And then when I discovered WWF at the time and WCW, because I started watching at the beginning of the Monday Night Wars. I mean, when it really started heating up, after Alundra Blaze dropped the women's title from WWF in the trash can, we'll get there, we'll watch it, it's okay. But you got all these different people getting up there, and they're dressed in bright colors, and they're dressed in spandex, and to me, that was about the closest you could get to seeing live-action superheroes up on the TV. And so I idolized these guys, and it was back before kayfabe went away, and so they were definitely trying to make you think this is their real personality, this is who these people are. So I really enjoyed that as a kid growing up and watching it. Now granted, you know, it happens to everybody. I got older, discovered girls, got a car, wanted to go out and hang out with my friends, so I kind of went away from wrestling. But a few years back, when I was still married, I am now happily divorced, but a few years back when I was still married, I was trying to find something that I could watch with my stepkids and that wasn't super violent, but also wasn't like mind-numbingly kiddie. Like it wasn't My Little Pony on repeat or that Baby Shark song. Fuck that Baby Shark song. By the way, I'm not safe for work. It should be listed on the Anchor and the SoundCloud, but I am not safe for work. You're going to hear me cuss a lot, like a goddamn sailor. Which, no offense to sailors, you know, squids have plenty of things to talk about as well, I'm sure, but most of the guys I know cuss like they're sailors. Anyway, I wanted to find something that I could watch with my kids, and we discovered wrestling. Like, I was off on Monday nights, I got to sit at home, and we watched Raw. And I started getting back into it around like 2014, 2015, back when The Shield was really coming into power, and you had a lot of stuff going on there, like right before Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn came up from NXT. It was just it was awesome to watch, and I saw the excitement in their eyes as they watched this, because, you know, my stepdaughter, she was like, I want to be a WWE diva. You know, my stepson, who was not very physical, I mean, he'd prefer to sit on his ass and play WWE 2K19 than go out and actually do something. But he started, like, getting up and going like, how do these guys look like that? They look like 5 of me. They're huge. And I'm all like, because they work out. They get out. They get active. They go play outside, and they, you know, they do stuff. I put it in kid terms for him. I wasn't like, they are praying at the Iron Palace to Broden himself, dropping the weights and getting swole. You know, he wouldn't have understood that because he was 7. But I found this way to connect with them by watching wrestling. And then, you know, of course, they moved on to other things. They wanted to watch other cartoons or something on Netflix or something like that. But I got into WWE again. And now that they did away with kayfabe and they weren't trying to portray it as real, I mean, for God's sakes, on most of the shows, there's a disclaimer at the front saying WWE performers are just characters. This is not an actual portrayal of who they are in their real life. And I'm both good and bad with that. I'm both happy and sad that kayfabe kind of went away, but that's something I'll talk about in a later episode. Anyway, the way that I got into this and the way that I really loved it is that these people were going out here and doing this job. And as a grown man, as a husband, as a father, I started to understand the taxing lifestyle that they have. To be away from your kids and your wife and your family or your husband or your partner or whoever for 300 days of the year, just to be traveling all over the place. And with the WWE Network, they gave me access to stuff that you don't get if you just watch Raw or SmackDown. I was able to see, you know, these people go from Milwaukee and then on Tuesday night and then Sunday they're in London or Budapest or Saudi Arabia or wherever. You know, they're on the road all the time. And so I started getting into it because I could relate to these people. You know, granted, not in physical ways. I'm not as swole as most of these guys. I'm working on it. I've lost 26 pounds in the last couple of months. Pretty proud of that. And if you guys follow me on Twitter, @KeepItShoot, if you guys follow me on Twitter, you can see some of my fitness journey. I'll post from time to time to show how I'm doing. My friends and I are going to be running a Tough Mudder next May, and that's going to be one of those things that I keep putting up on the Twitter and talk about in the show and give you guys updates because, you know, I want to talk about it, and it's my show, so fuck it. I'm going to talk about it. But what this show's going to be is me going and watching all kinds of wrestling. I mean, everything from WWE to AEW, which is more mainstream, to Ring of Honor, to New Japan, to all the indie circuits. I mean, heck, I might be going and covering some of the Midwest shows. I'm here in southern Missouri, and I know that we have shows here in my town. I know that we have shows not that far away from me, less than an hour drive. So I might be doing some live shows or just interviews or seeing if I can get some of these guys that train and live in the area to come on and watch pay-per-views with me. But that brings it up. I'm going to be watching big events. And now, in the intros to my shows, I'll be giving you guys kind of what's been happening. Like, I'm not going to break down, unless it's a huge match or a huge fight, I'm not going to break down individual Raw and SmackDown. I'm not going to do that. If I'm doing a WWE episode, it's usually going to be a pay-per-view or one of their in-ring events that was bigger and had a big impact on their brand. But like AEW, I'll be covering the first few pay-per-views before AEW Dynamite started airing. And I'm going to let that get a little bit further down the road before I start covering AEW Dynamite. Like, I'm definitely going to be covering Full Gear whenever it comes out. I've already already got my money set aside to order the pay-per-view and all that kind of stuff. But then I'm going to be looking back at like what led to AEW. How does this impact WWE? How nice it is to finally have some competition. Because like I said, I came in the height of the Monday Night War. I started watching this, mid-late 90s, and WCW was on point. NWO was taking over the world. WWF was in the middle of the Attitude Era, Stone Cold, Austin 316 reigned supreme. Triple H, Shawn Michaels formed D-Generation X. I mean, it was a wonderful time to be a wrestling fan. But I'm going to be talking about all of that, and my first episode is going to be covering the King of the Ring 1996, what ostensibly kicked off the Attitude Era. When Stone Cold Steve Austin won the King of the Ring against Jake the Snake, he was able to get up and give his speech, and in his speech he said the famous line, Jake, you're a Bible thumper, you got your John 3:16, well, Austin 3:16 said I just whipped your ass. And, other than the fact that Stone Cold Steve Austin is a complete and utter badass who I would personally like to model my life after, it also brought about this new thing because at the time, Vince McMahon was on the microphone. He was the straight commentator. He wasn't the color commentator. He was the guy that was just calling the match and interviewing people and doing all that kind of stuff. And then you had Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler, sometimes Jerry the King Lawler because he was still an in-ring performer at the time. But you had them sitting there and giving this color commentary and doing all that kind of stuff. And at the King of the Ring, Owen Hart was sitting there because he had a broken wrist at the time, so he had a cast on. You had all these things, but behind the scenes, of course, Vince McMahon was running the show. And one of the famous quotes, if you get into the behind the lore of WWE and wrestling in general, you heard Vince McMahon, many people say, he said, that's attitude. That's what we need. That's what we need going forward. And they started shaping the brand around these people like Brian Pillman, may he rest in peace, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Shawn Michaels, who was notoriously hard to work with, but he started transitioning away from being the heartthrob, heartbreak kid to being more of an edgy, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want type of character, going from 96 to 97 and all this kind of stuff. And that kind of started with King of the Ring too, because leading up to it, you had the whole scandal with him hitting on Bret the Hitman Hart and Owen Hart's sister, who was married to the British Bulldog. And it was a whole big thing, but I'll get into that on my first episode. What I'd like to say for this is thank you guys for stopping by. You can tell your friends. They can look us up on SoundCloud. It's SoundCloud/KeepItShoot. The Anchor, I'm on Anchor, anchor.fm/KeepItShoot, or on the Anchor app. Just look up the Shootcast. And this is the one and only OAO Shootcast. I know if you Google it, the reason I picked the name was because there were 20 different other things out there named the Shootcast, but none of them are actually about wrestling. And in wrestling, a shoot is a real move, a real fighting move, and it's kind of become a term to broadly describe anything that's real, like Stone Cold Steve Austin or Xavier Woods saying, I called him by his shoot name, like when CM Punk was out there doing a promo with Triple H, and he said, no, this isn't CM Punk talking to Triple H, this is Phil Brooks talking to Paul Levesque. CM Punk was using their shoot names, their real life names. So that's why I called this, because this is my real life watching wrestling. And you guys are giving me the opportunity to get all this bullshit out of my head and talk about it to my heart's content, because I got plenty of gigs on my computer. I could record this thing for 5-6 hours at a time if I wanted to. I won't do that to you. I would not subject somebody to listening to me for 5 or 6 hours. That is horrible. That would be the biggest pile of horse shit I think I've ever seen. But you guys are giving me the chance to get this stuff off my chest, so I don't annoy the shit out of my friends whenever I start bringing up, hey, did you guys catch NXT? Or did you guys watch Hell in a Cell? And yeah, they might have watched it because they are wrestling fans as well, but they're not wrestling fanatics. And I am, unfortunately, dyed-in-the-wool wrestling fanatic. So please, tell your friends, follow us on Twitter at KeepItShoot, because the Shootcast was taken on Twitter. But that's going to be me signing off. Thank you for listening to the OAO, the one and only Shootcast. And this is PHS signing off. Everybody, keep it shoot, y'all.